Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me again. If you're new, please do remember to click that subscribe button at the bottom and like this video. For those who've been here before, thank you so much for supporting me, and please do keep on coming back. So in today's video, we'll just be continuing making this robe, and these are the things we'll be needing. We'll be needing thread, a measuring tape, the material, a scissors, and of course the tailor's chalk. So in a previous video, which I'll link somewhere in the video or in the description bar down below, I showed you how to cut this pattern paper, which just makes it simpler for us to cut on the material. So in the video, I'm just showing you the back neckline, the front neckline, the front armhole, which you cut in deeper by 0.5 inches, and the width, which we measured for the front and for the back. So for the front width, it's bigger than the front one by 4 inches, and you fold it in to get the back one like I've done in the video. So from here, I'll just pin down the paper on the material. So once I've securely pinned down my paper on the material, I'll just add in my seam allowance. So for the side seams, I'm using a 1-inch seam allowance because I'll be using a French seam, which is just one way of neatening your edges when you don't have an overlocking machine. But for the armhole and for the shoulder, I'll simply use the normal sewing allowance, which is 0.5 inches, because I'll just sew it up in the normal way and probably just use a zigzag stitch to neaten my edges. So at this point, I decided to just use a French seam for my shoulder as well. So I added a 1-inch sewing allowance on the shoulder and only used 0.5 inches for the armhole. So once I measured the seam allowance, I just connected the points all around and the 0.5 along the neckline. And once those dots are connected, I'll just use my scissors and cut everything. So that's all for the back piece. So for the front piece, I'll just cut out the front opening, which is measured from the shoulder line of the back neckline all the way to at about 9 inches on the front center line. So just make sure you're using a paper scissors so that you don't make your material scissors blunt. And then for the armhole, I'll just cut in deeper by 0.5 inches, as you can see in the video. All these things I explained in the tutorial where I showed you how to make the paper pattern. So when you're done with that, you'll just pin down the paper on your material, as you will see in the video, and then add your seam allowances, which I'll explain later, and then you can cut. So once your material is securely pinned down, you'll just measure a 0.5 seam allowance along the front opening. Then you'll measure a 1-inch seam allowance on your shoulder line for the French seam. You'll also measure a 0.5-inch allowance on your armhole, because on the armhole you won't be using a French seam. But for the side seam, you'll measure 1 inch as well, which is the same as what you did for the back piece, which is 1-inch seam allowance to accommodate the French seam. And as I've mentioned already, the French seam is just a way of neatening up your garment so that you don't have any raw edges when you don't have an overlocking machine. So I'll demonstrate how to do the French seam in the video. So now we have cut the front piece and the back piece. So for the front piece, we'll be adding this Chitenge material on the opening just to give it some life and some color, because the blue robe is quite dull just on its own, so the purple and the blue just make it look better, and it matches the satin bonnet that I've made for myself. So at this point, I'm just showing you the outline of what we'll be sewing. That's the front pieces. The Chitenge material is just about 7 inches. So when I fold it, it will end up at about 3 inches. That with 1 inch for sewing allowance. So for the front Chitenge, I just added stiffener so that when I add it onto the robe, it has some shape and some form. Then I just went on to cut the tie, which will be tying around the waist on the robe, which I also made into Chitenge so that it just matches the front part of the robe. So I'll do the same as well for the sleeves of the robe, just so that there's some consistency where the sleeves, the front part and the tie all have Chitenge in them. So I made a notch on the neck measurements for the back, just so that it's easier to match it with the Chitenge once I'm adding it on the side openings. So I went on to measure out my sleeve pattern. So I just drew a line at the edge of the fabric as the point which I'll be using to make all my vertical measurements. So at the edge of the sleeve, I added the Chitenge, as you see in the video, which is just about 4 inches long. And from there, I just measured out all my vertical measurements and just pinned them out. So for my armhole depth, I used 4 inches, which is based on my bust measurements. So I'll link some Pinterest pictures which I used for you to just reference. So I'm measuring out about 4.7 inches, sorry, not 4 inches, so 4.7 inches. Then I added my sleeve length on that line and also added my seam allowance, as you will see. Then I connected the points and just ensured that I measured out the deeper 0.5 inches for the front armhole, which is deeper than the back armhole, just all those things. So there are so many videos which show how to make a sleeve pattern, but I'll eventually also make one for myself and link it, but at this point I do not have that video. So once that is done, I just connected the two ends as you see in the video and measured 0.5 inches. That's for the back armhole. So I'm using the hip ruler just to connect those points and just curve it out towards the edge of the armhole. That's the apex of the armhole. So I'm not a tailor, so I don't really know how to explain these things, but there's so many videos on YouTube that show some of these things. So as you can see, I'm just trying to curve out and differentiate the back armhole from the front armhole. You can see the material is on forward, so I'll just start by cutting the back armhole, which is the one which is just normally done and does not have the S curve on it. And then from there, I'll just open it up and cut the front armhole following that S shape to just accommodate the deepness of the front armhole. So once the sleeve is done, I'll just cut out the chitenge material that will be added to the edge of the sleeve, as you can see in the video. So I'm cutting out 2 pieces for both armholes, and once those pieces are done, I'll also cut stiffener which will be ironed on them, just to give them some form and some shape once it's sewn. And we've come to the end of the video. Please look out for the video where I'll be sewing this robe. Please do remember to subscribe, like this video, and comment where you're not clear. Thank you.